All right, we are on the air for another DoneJS open source stand-up, contributor stand-up. Just getting the Trello board going, and we'll talk about what we've done over the last week and plan to do before next week. So I'll get started. I worked on some pretty big changes to how CanJS works, to how CanComputes work, which is really how CanJS works, because computes are pretty much everything. I'll do my best to explain the two changes, one to computes and another to batching. I'll try to do a rough explanation. So, let's see if I can find it. This is as part of my process to actually figure this out. I started drawing in PowerPoint an example. So the problem, full size itself. Okay, so imagine this is a series of computes where I can kind of give an example of what this looks like. Say I have a root compute, or a root observable, but in this case a compute. And there's a child compute that depends on it, so child 1. It somehow uses the root compute for value. In this case, it could just call root and return it. And then I might have child 2, which also depends on root. I might have a grandchild. It might depend on child 1. And then I might eventually have a result that combines grandchild 1 and child 2. So here I've got a kind of a structure of computes depending on other computes. And I've drawn out that relationship here, where I have my root, my 2 children, my grandchild, and then the result that combines them. There was a problem in there was a problem in computes in that I thought we had solved, because we were doing some binding order tricks and things like that. But there was a bug where if you had a situation like this where root would change and dispatch its change events, which C2 would notice, and then C1 would notice, and then these would both update their values, produce a change event themselves, where result would update, and then result would update and try to rerun itself before GC1 had finished calculating its new value. So if, for instance, in this setup that I've already got here, oh, you can't see my screen? Okay, I just got something from Julian. You can't see screen. Can everybody else see my screen?
Yeah, it's
okay.
Should be fine now.
Yeah, I can see it. Okay. Oh, he says you can go.
So the problem would be here, like if I were changing root to 2, the number down here really should be 4, result should be 4, but instead it would get calculated as 3 because GC1 wasn't getting an update. So the solution essentially is we order computes now by depth. We essentially say when computes are being calculated, they take on the depth of their parent compute. So if this has no dependencies, it'll be a 0. If this has one, and because this has a dependency on a compute, it'll be a depth of 1, and then this one will be a depth of the biggest child plus 1, which happens to be 2. This one will have a depth of 1. And then result here will take on the depth of its biggest child plus 1, which will be 3. So what we do now is essentially when root is changing, we collect, we'll see what change events have happened. So we'll see that, okay, a 1, these will both get the change event, but instead they'll put themselves in kind of a queue. Actually, here's the example. This is actually the example. Glad I did this. Essentially what happens is when root produces a change event, a C1 and C2 are going to see it. So they go in this kind of queue system at their depth, which, let's just say, well, I don't want to explain that right now, so I'm just going to go here. They'll go in at their depth, which will be at position 1. And by the way, Sean, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me and ask questions. But so root here changes, and C1 will see it and add itself to this kind of queue structure, sorted by depth. And these two kind of pointers know kind of where in the queue the smallest item in the queue and the biggest item in the queue is. So these two things will go in the queue, and then this will take the first thing off of the queue and recompute it, figure out its new value, and produce the change event. So it's going to remove this one, recalculate it, produce a change event. Anything that gets changed by GC2 goes back in this kind of queue, this task queue, organized by its depth. So it'll go in position 2. Then, and then this counter moves up to 2. Then the next item of the queue will be taken off at the lowest point, which is C2. It will be recalculated and its change events produced. Now it will produce a change event for result 3. Result 3, or for result will go here. Now the task queue will look again. Hey, is anything at task? Oh, this position will move. Is anything at position 1? No, it's not. So we're going to move to the next position, which is GC1, and we're going to run that, recalculate that. We'll notice that result has already been added, so we don't need to add it again. And then we'll see that there's nothing else at position 2, so then we'll execute position 3. So internally, there's essentially this task queue that updates computes based upon their depth. So that was change 1. Change 2 is there's actually kind of a batch, like batch events task queue. So what happens is, think about, I have 2 computes now, and I have other child computes that kind of combine their values. So this is kind of like saying I have an A and a B, and I have a compute 1 that adds what A and B is. A compute 2 does the same thing, and then result combines these 2 things. But someone has some code that listens on C1 for when it changes and is going to change these other 2 computes here. What happens now is if A and B are going to be changed within a batch, we're going to save all of the events that they're dispatching until the batch ends, and then dispatch them and start going through this kind of process, only dispatching computes based upon their depth. Now, once this compute gets changed and fires off this change event, it'll start a new batch. It'll change the result of R1 and R2, but these events won't dispatch until after result has been finalized. So you can think of it as batch start and batch stop kind of collects events, and those events are only computes that are kind of derived their value from those events are going to be fired at that point, or update within that as a result of that batch. And any other computes that might change in other batches will be performed after the current batch. I don't know if that's a great explanation, but please ask me questions if you have any.
So I think one thing to mention for that is that that's only when you're batching stuff, right? Because if you don't, then you just get multiple events.
Yeah, you get multiple. Like if you're not batching when A and B changes, result will update itself twice. This is a way to prevent that. Which is kind of cool. Okay. So let me try to state again, just to kind of try to re-explain exactly what happens. Essentially, there's like two phases for every batch. There's the collection phase of what events are being collected within a batch, and then there's kind of the you can think of like the compute recalculating phase. So if I had code that was changing in some code, the starting code would look like can.batch. Let's start. A is, A, and B is, it's changing the value of A and B in some batch. This should be stop. This is essentially the collecting phase, and any events that are going to be produced by the changes in here are going to be prevented until this batch stop is called. And at that point, only the computes that are directly derived from these events that are being produced here will reevaluate. Any other batches that might happen are essentially not going to be, these events aren't going to be dispatched till after all of the until all of the derived computes from this first batch, batch 1, have completed. So essentially, result 1 will get a new value before R1 and R2 start updating C2. And then if result also depended on C2, result would update twice, essentially. It would update first through this, and then second through this. Anyways, those are the changes. Fixes some nasty bugs. And I hope actually cleans up the logic of batching, I think, so that might be confusing, but at least it's well understood. And
Julian is asking if it's still slower than the initial.
Yes, but not that bad. I mean, it's still much faster than 2.2. It's just slower than what I had hoped 2.3 would become. But it's still, overall, 2.3 is much faster than 2.2. So it's like, I think it's like 5%, 6% slower for the spinning circles than the fastest that 2.2 was. But that's 30% faster than CanJS 2.2 probably. So that's what I did for the most part. And then I fixed a bunch of other bugs recently to make migrating between CanJS 2.2 and 2.3 a little bit easier. And then now I've actually started working on the getting started guides and some of the other getting started stuff of CanJS. So like I've noticed that so much stuff is so crazy out of date. Like even the YCanJS, I just rewrote it to be very simple and small because there's so much stuff about EJS that just wasn't meaningful. So I'm going to eventually get to the getting started guide, but I'm going to fix some of the like other pages on my way there. Like I'm cleaning up this one, talking about DoneJS. Going to include how to use it with NPM and Browserify, things like that. So my plan is to probably clean up a lot of this basic stuff by the end of the week this week, and then next week we'll be busy, so I won't probably get started with the actual getting started guide, but that will be my plan kind of after that. Maybe. It depends on how place my order looks when I actually turn our attention to that. That's my update. And then I'm actually
go
ahead. Sorry, one thing. My plan is I actually kind of wanted to fix up some of these pages before I wrote the release article. Because I just feel like it's weird to have a release article with like talking about all these new features, but then if you go, you don't see any of them. Like even things like this on our homepage, I really think we should. This shouldn't be using CanClick anymore. So I want to get to stuff like that before the release article. I just think it's more important. Cool. That's it for me.
Okay, I'll go. I'll do my little demo. So when I finish is, so I've been working asynchronous server-side rendering. So that, well, here I'll show. So this is kind of an example, little example app. This has a model that gets messages from our DoneJS chat messages API and just lists the messages. And in the chat app, I think we're using what do you call it, the tag, but I'm not using it here. I'm just using a view model that calls getList. Now, before, you'd have to do, I think, something like this. You'd have to get the root and call, well, not wait for it, call page data with, I think, the name, which is message, the params, and then the actual promise. You'd have to do something like that to get it to work. But because of the new CanWait project and all the asynchronous rendering, now you can just call getList, and behind the scenes it's going to wait for that and everything, which is nice. So
it won't do page data, though, I'm assuming.
What's that?
Behind the scenes, it's just going to wait for that, but it's not going to page data it, is it?
No, it is going to page data it, yeah.
Oh, is that something that CanConnect is calling?
Yes.
Inside of it?
Yeah, CanConnect does it. Mm-hmm.
It just calls like.
So
paid.
There's CanWait data, which just pushes data into like an array.
How does it know about CanWait? Is it just checking the global scope and seeing if there's like?
There's global. Yeah.
But it works if
it checks. Yeah, it will. It won't wait if it's not there.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
if I'm using CanConnect outside of DoneJS server-side rendering, and there is no CanWait global, it's not going to break.
Yeah, right. It checks to see if the global's there.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
If it's not, it just returns the promise.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah. So this is the curl. We see our list of messages, which that tells you that it did wait. And then this is the inline cache, which is the data that was appended. So it's pretty nice. So that's what I did. That's what I did earlier, finished up earlier in the week. And then I did NPM version 3 support for Steel. So I did that. I did a pre-release for that. Then this morning I've been working on getting the generator to enable that because there's a flag you have to set. So when you do DoneJS init, we want to check to see if you're using npm3, and if you are, set the flag. So I've been working on that. Ran into a bug where it's installing like the pre-release stuff, which we don't want it to do. So try to fix that.
What do you mean installing
And
pre-release stuff?
when you do DoneJS init,
Yeah.
it will install pre-release versions.
Oh.
So like I did a pre-release of CanSSR, Steel, and it's getting those, which we don't want that to happen, right?
Why?
And
Why is that?
unless we specifically told it to. I haven't figured it out yet. I think when you do a save, I think the default is to just get whatever the latest version is, regardless of whether it's a pre-release or not.
I thought there's a way to configure that on like NPM or something.
There's got to be a way to.
David,
Are you sure you released that as a pre-release? It looks like an official one.
Which one?
Um,
Steel and CanSSR. That's right. Well, CanSSR is an official one, maybe.
So you didn't.
But still,
there isn't a pre-release script in CanSSR. So this looks like a pre-release, but it's not flagged as a pre-release in npm.
but even if it was flagged, I guess I don't understand why DoneJS init is installing those. Wouldn't DoneJS init use the versions specified in like, the DoneJS package or whatever, the place where all the version numbers are listed?
It should. It may not get them, and then it installs the latest.
What?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it should be. It should do that. That's right.
Is it not using those and just doing an npm install? Because if it is, then that's definitely a
I'm
bug.
not sure.
That's definitely if that's the case. Should we create a card for that then, probably, or is there an issue for that?
I create an issue in the generator project.
Okay.
So what are you you're saying? Because I'm not using the npm version functionality, that's why it doesn't do it?
Well, yeah. So it doesn't flag it as a pre-release. But yeah, this you probably see.
So it's not based off the version name. Like if you put pre in the version name, that doesn't necessarily make it a pre-release.
No. You need to have the scripts.
Just
so
have
here, if
It does it does make it a pre-release. It just doesn't say like npm install will just by default npm install installs the latest pushed version no matter what its name.
there is a flag for npm that you can say this is a pre-release, but you have to explicitly set it. If it's in the version name, yeah, it's the latest version, which is incompatible with other pre-releases, but it's not.
Do you know what the flag is?
Well, just run the pre-release script. We need to add those anyway. But if this part
I'd like to understand like how it works
runs,
too.
So if you look at what I just posted in the chat, if this part of the generator runs, then it'll install the latest version, which is not what we want. But it might be that.
Yeah, we could talk about this later. I think the bigger thing, which I realize, is we need to do another like issue management for DoneJS. Maybe we do that tonight, just to kind of identify things and prioritize them. Because some things, like if that is a bug, that should be like released as in 0.5 and fixed.
Yes.
So, but I haven't gone through like the list of issues and prioritize them. So let's maybe plan on doing that later today. Figure out really what we want in DoneJS 0.6 and what should be done elsewhere and earlier. Cool. Awesome, though. It's very exciting to see the new SSR stuff. Good work, David. Or Matthew.
Yep.
Cool. Who wants to go next?
So yeah, I have a question for Prashant anyway.
Yeah, sure. So I was working on this issue 2080, and as part of fixing this defect, I created a unit test.
Do you want to share your screen?
Sorry?
Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
What you're talking about?
Okay. Okay, is it visible now? Is my screen visible?
Yep.
Okay. So this is what the tests look like. Now, this is the test that I have here. And if I change, if I change this to Mustache and run my tests again, then the tests start. Then one of the tests it starts failing. So if you look at this failing test, this is what fails if I use can.mustache.
Yeah, but it works if you use stash, right?
That's correct. So if I just replace this with stash.
The reason for that is those tests inside where you're the tests inside here are they run in both the virtual DOM and in the non-virtual DOM, like the real DOM. And Mustache doesn't support the virtual DOM, so that's why it's failing.
Okay, so I guess replacing the Mustache with stash here wouldn't be the correct fix then, right?
No, replacing stash with Mustache is what it should look like. Yes, because you can't. Here, if you scroll up to like, you see the matching curly brace of line 155. If you scroll up to that matching curly brace, it'll be like near the top of the file. Like it'll be like almost all the way up to the top.
Okay, just a minute.
Oh, there you saw it, actually. I can open mine.
Line 16. That's the one you're talking about?
1 second. Yeah, you see this make test? What this does is it essentially makes the same set of tests twice. Once so they run with a virtual DOM, and once so that they run with a without the virtual DOM, which is the normal DOM. So that's why Mustache wasn't working, because it doesn't. All of the tests inside here need to be written with stash.
Okay, so my question is, how do I make it run just for the DOM and not for the virtual DOM then?
I mean, you probably don't want to do that because we want to make sure that everything works in both the DOM and the virtual DOM.
Okay.
That would mean that we're never testing Mustache, though.
We do test Mustache. Mustache has its own tests. I'm all right with not heavily testing Mustache because it's gonna, it's deprecated as of 2.3, so that's all right.
Okay,
so,
because I was using Mustache in this unit test because the original example that Stan had shared had can.mustache in it.
Yeah, but that's okay that he was using it. The same, it should work without that. If you really want to make it also run in Mustache, you can make a copy of that same test just anywhere else out, like make it somewhere else in this file, like not inside this make test function, and then it won't switch between virtual DOM and the normal DOM. That makes sense. But I don't think it's necessary because the code that you're touching doesn't change between Mustache and Stash. A better fix would probably be to allow people to. A better fix would probably we call make test 3 times. One for the virtual DOM and Stash, one for the virtual DOM. Or no, and then once for the DOM and Stash, and then once for Mustache and Stash. That would be an improvement. And then we change anywhere where it says can Stash to just like make template, and make template is mapped to either Mustache or Stash. That would be the better fix. But for now, just leaving it as Stash is totally fine. And we can make the better test if we need to. Or you can eventually if you really want to.
Okay.
So
I think yeah. So I think this fix should be acceptable then.
Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the one other thing that I would change just to make the test a little bit. You could simplify it a little bit by instead of using the inserted event, you could just call that init, and then you don't actually have to even append your template to the document because init is called before it's inserted, just when the component is created. That would just simplify it a little bit more and speed up the type. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I'll do that. Yeah.
But not super important. Like in general, the test I try not to append things to the document unless I really need to, unless there's a good reason to. Because a lot of stuff you can just do in a detached DOM, and then it's a lot faster.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that. Yeah, thank you. So, so that's all I have. So what I'll do is I'll make the changes that you have just suggested, and I'll do a pull request for this change. After that, I'll see the list of open issues again. I'll go through the list of open issues again and pick up a defect to work on. Unless you have something that you would like me to work on.
No, I mean, there's not one I have in mind. Anything that you just let me. If there's anything that go through it. If there's anything you're interested in, just ping me and I can walk you through it or help you get started however you need help.
Sure, I'll do that. Yeah.
Awesome. Sweet. Thanks, Prashant.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. David, you want to go next?
Yeah, I had one more question because this is I think the last one that we won in 234. There's a 1866. Are we got it in or not?
What?
Like for 234?
Yeah.
Issue number 1866.
I don't know what 1866 is. I don't have all the issue numbers memorized.
Well, yes, there.
Oh no, this is not going to be in 234. This is and it's good to share your screen if you're gonna talk about.
Oh yeah.
No.
This one.
So Are you sharing it, David?
Should show up, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm just was getting share myself. So yeah, this one is going to be a nasty one to fix. But fortunately, the same stuff I did in computes can be used, and I actually just rewrote last night to fix the memory leak issue. I ended up changing node lists so that they know about all child node lists, even ones that are deeply nested. That will allow us to have the same kind of depth information. So what we can do, what I'm planning on making work is computes. I'm planning on making it so computes, I can also say a base depth for them. I can say that, like, hey, this is a base depth of 10 because it's like really deeply nested part of the live binding. So it will execute after something that's on the top. So what I can do is use the node lists depth as a basis for a computes depth, and then computes will execute in the right order. Yeah, that's how I'm planning on making it work.
Okay, so once, Prashant, you have the pull request up.
235 for this.
I'm gonna let me create a new milestone because I don't think I have that one yet. Date. Cool. So there's a lot of good fixes. So as for the testing stuff, I actually found another Windows issue that I also fixed. So Matthew, I don't know if you saw this, but apparently this is great. That's the stuff I have to deal with. So apparently this cross-spawn async thing that it was supposed to find the right executable for node scripts doesn't work all the time, especially not when you install DoneJS globally in Windows 10, so you have to actually use the CMD instead. I thought that would fix my issues, but it didn't. The guide automation, it doesn't run on Windows, and I don't know what else to do to figure out why it doesn't. At the moment now with this, it just stops during the installation of the DoneJS dependencies, even though they work fine if you run it.
Does it stop in the middle, or does it stop after? Like after
I sent you a screenshot. It's right in the middle. Like it's during compilation of something, and it's really strange because if you run it individually or in a batch script, in a shell script, it passes fine. But if you run it with the automation, it just, I don't know if you saw the screenshot, it just stops in most Windows versions. I tried, but I'm honestly not sure what else I can do to figure out what's going on there.
I mean, does it stop the process?
No, it just hangs, like in the middle of the installation.
But is it like in between installing two pack? I mean, you should be able to find which piece of code it's...
Yeah, it's like one of the module compilation. I know where it is, but shouldn't stop there because it passes just fine when you run it standalone. It's the WebSocket, CanSSR WebSocket node module, and I'm not sure what else I can do to figure out what's going on there.
Is it the installing DoneJS step, or is it DoneJS init?
It's DoneJS init. Installing DoneJS works fine. DoneJS init creates all the template files, and then it starts installing the dependencies, and it goes until the WebSocket CanSSR dependency, and then just
Does it get through the answering the questions part?
Well, can we table? Let's talk about this after later. We'll have to debug this later. But David and Matthew, if you could help David a little bit too on this today. That would be good. Actually, Matthew, when you went, what's next for you?
I need to work on slides tomorrow and Friday.
Right, okay. Okay. Yeah. David, just keep plugging away at it. I mean, I know it's hard, but eventually, I mean, you can rewrite the GCC compiler, right? For Windows.
Yeah.
Or like the solution is maybe we use the different dependencies, or like at some point there's a solution.
Yes. No. I know, but it's Windows. I wish it would be a little more verbose when something's going on.
Yeah. The problem is it's just like we have to support Windows.
Yeah, and it works. That's the strange part about it. It runs when you run it manually. So it's stopping in a part that actually isn't even supposed to break. But yeah. So that's what I'm still on. We probably want to get 0.6 pre out for Friday, right?
Maybe. Yeah, that would be nice. That was the plan. But,
okay.
It's good to have testing with you. So
yeah, no, I get that. It works in Travis.
That's good.
Which is nice,
Good.
But that's not the whole story.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So there's a few other things that Julian want to talk about. Documentation about component events. He submitted this issue. I think that was still a issue, right? That wasn't. That still is in 2.4.
They're sharing your screen?
I will. 1 second.
So I took those out because documentation we can pretty much merge it anytime. So I
moved on to 2.5.
Well, I haven't moved it to a milestone at all because it doesn't really matter, right? Like if you merge the documentation ones, I don't know if you know that, but if you merge it in, it'll just show up on the homepage.
No, I know, but I think it's worth always keeping a label on when we try to get this in by, right? So.
Okay, so we'll add it to.
Where was that? Well, that's not what's. I don't think that's what his questions are about.
Oh, sorry.
About that. What issue was that? No, it's hard to find now that it's lost its.
I can add them back in.
What is it? P. Pyrox. There you go. Forward plus? There it is. Okay, so I just had I'm not sure what, Julian, if you have oh, you got the number 286, yeah. I don't know what specifically you did want to talk about, but maybe one, you meant the status. The status is I was going to go in and kind of rearrange some of this to put it in like I talk about can map and can lists, like examples of just doing direct binding in there for the holes that aren't there. For all the other files, what I might do is just remove this section to just get all of the other changes in right away, and then make a few smaller examples, because I like how you have this bulleted list here. What I might just make is like a few smaller examples intermingled with this, so it's not just as big of an example, and then pull out the bigger example for later to be put into can map. And that way, most of it gets in. I just think that this was just like I mentioned in the comment, just a bit much for people to really digest. That's what I think will happen there. when this gets in, hopefully soon. I mean, I'm working on docs right now, so I'll probably get to this pretty quick. Hopefully before JSConf. If not, then right after JSConf. So, I'll be honest, if it doesn't happen this week, it's not going to happen until the week after, just because next week is Vitovi's. We're doing our year-end reviews, so next week, David, Matthew, and I will be pretty much like down for the count. And then the following week, I'll make sure I get it in right away if I can't get to it this week. But I'll try hard to get to it this week. Okay. Now, Vagrant. So Julian told me there was some. I don't exactly know the context, but there were some issues with Vagrant for Windows. I think he was trying to get. DoneJS to run, and it had problems with symlinks and Vagrant.
Yeah, I talked to him about it too. So the problem is that if you're using Vagrant in Windows, it doesn't install to the node modules .bin. You know how it adds all of your bin stuff there. Well, we absolutely depend on that. So
would it be possible to have our DoneJS like have a slow mode where it essentially is going to go looking through all the bin folders of direct dependencies to be able to call things that way?
Could do that. How would you know to use slow mode? You would detect this.
.bin is empty, and if .bin is empty, then you start crawling yourself.
There might be a problem still, though, if we use our original executable, because npm creates command line scripts, right, for Windows. Matthew.
It doesn't do it in this case.
Yeah, exactly. But then that means you couldn't just, well, you could maybe call it with node.
You could call it node, right? Yeah.
Or DoneJS binary directly. You have to use node in front of it, which is what we used to have. I don't know why we changed that.
I mean, if you just require it, won't that just do the same thing? If you just found the path and you require this file and it's a node script, won't that run it?
No, but then how do you pass it? How do you pass command line options?
You can. Those are globals, right? That you could set right before doing that.
Maybe.
I don't know. I just figure if this is like, if symlinks, if this is something that we want to solve, then this is potentially solvable. Julian, I don't know if you want to give that a try. It's not actually, it could be pretty simple just to, and we could point you in the right direction. It could be pretty simple to just make a node script that just goes through the immediate dependencies, looks for what that executable is, and then runs it a different way. I'm not sure what you mean by can we separate node modules and the source of the web page. We need, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
What do you mean by the source of the web page?
So there is a way to get around using the DoneJS command line. But I don't know if ours doesn't work. I don't know if Yeoman installation globally works. But you can technically use all of DoneJS without the command line tool.
Yeah, but this isn't related to what Julian is asking.
No, this is something
Julian,
different.
I'm not totally sure what you're asking. I think maybe write that up in a form question because you can't talk to us right now because you don't have a mic. And we'll get back to you or get a mic and we'll talk about it on Wednesday. Plus, we need to get going because we have the training in 10 minutes and it's about server-side rendering. So I think, Matthew, you're up for this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Get to practice when I talk.
Yeah, some good practice. So thank you, everybody, for coming and awesome fixes, and thank you so much, Prashant and Julian, for joining us. And hopefully you guys have a good weekend, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.